Hello? I hope everybody can hear me.
Good.
And I want to thank Bruce for pictures or articles I never knew existed. I got invited, pardon me, I got invited to speak tonight. It's kind of a nice experience. I've been uninvited before. As a matter of fact, the experience I had was I was going to give a talk to a little section down at Porterville, and the fellow that had invited me said, "Fred, we have a Hollywood starlet that can speak. We don't want to miss this opportunity. Would it be all right?" It was, of course, of course. And I saw him a couple of weeks later. I said, "How did it go?" He said, "She was terrible. Talked in circles. We might as well have had you." I got involved in snow surveys when I went to work for the state of California, Cooperative Snow Surveys, 1947, December of 47. I spent 1 week in the office and 2 weeks getting private ski lessons up at Donner Summit. And after the 2 weeks, I was saying goodbye to the instructor. He says, "Fred, if anybody ever asks who it was that taught you to ski, never mention my name." I have a booklet of notes today. Unfortunately, I can't read them all. But on the other hand, I noticed that this group follows an admonition that was given to me years ago. Never take life too serious. Nobody gets out of it alive. And with that in mind, I want to go on with my presentation. 1947, 48, great year. 49, 48 was celebrated in Reno. 49 in Denver. I missed the one in Denver. I was working for Fred Patchett, who had been involved in snow surveys following the war and perhaps even following the 1933-34 short budget when money wasn't put in by the state. But on the other hand, I couldn't have ever worked for a finer person, a smarter man, and a better man. And I want to mention his name in passing. I'm going to mention a few other names right now. Unfortunately, because I was in California, I didn't get to know all of these people personally, just from time to time at the snow conference. One of them, of course, was George D. Clyde, who was from 1924 involved in the development of the snow tubes that are used for sampling, and he was one that came up with the cutter of a diameter such that 1 inch of water of a cylinder that size would weigh an ounce, and that became the federal sampler. Prior to that, it was the Mount Rose sampler. That was developed in 1924. Earlier, of course, Dr. Church was making measurements. I believe it was called the Mount Rose sampler, and we were still using some of those. And he had begun making measurements about the turn of the century, from the 1800s to the 1900s. He and Dr. Boardman, a professor of engineering, was asked to try and forecast the rise of Lake Tahoe during the following spring. Lake Tahoe, most people don't realize, is a reservoir. Only 6 feet of height in that reservoir accounts for 720,000 acre-feet of water. And they began forecasting that rise. As Dr. Boardman said, fortunately, for a number of years, the forecast worked out pretty well and became accepted. He said we didn't have too many years that were really trying us. But anyway, he got involved. The state cooperators, prior to the state's involvement in 1930, the PG&E was making measurements from 1910, the Southern California Edison from prior to 1930, and the credit for the history of snow surveys in California goes back to those years. For many years, the Western Snow Conference didn't meet on its own. It met in the evening, a function of the American Geophysical Society. And it wasn't until 1948 that the Western Snow Conference met for the first time on its own feet. That was in Reno. I happened to have attended that conference. None of you were there. The experiences go back to the kind of fellows that were involved. Fred Paget, in the summer of 1948, decided to publish the Snow Surveyors Forum, and he, with his typewriter, punched out a lot of stuff. I tried to help. Luckily, he didn't use all my comments. 1948 and 49, he published the Snow Surveyors Forum. Had help from a number of different individuals. I could name a few. I wouldn't get them all. In 49, he passed it on to George Lewis. George Lewis, over in Independence, California, took on the duties and developed the El Fersanti Award, including the statue that you see. By the way, those statues are indestructible, even when you throw them away. But George Lewis started a number of things, including cutting the ties. I noticed that they cut them rather high. I was at a function where a rabbi was involved, and he cut the very tips of that. But George Lewis decided to come out with the El Fersanti Award, and as a matter of fact, he had it all in mind who to give it to. We told him there had to be a committee, so George Lewis, I, and Tom Henderson. We'll come back to Tom Henderson in a little bit.
Yep.
But we all got up there in front of everybody. George Lewis had put out the Snow Surveyors Forum, had given them a dummy so that they knew how to set it up, and had neglected to show that he was the author and no longer was Fred Paget. So we gave him the El Fersanti Award as a surprise during the session that he was naming somebody else, and it stuck. By the way, I am the second recipient of the El Fersanti Award. I'm the only living recipient from that time here tonight. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. As I say, don't take life too serious. The different individuals that have received that award include, among others, I gave it to him. Usually the recipient of one year can give it to the next year's recipient. And the next year's recipient was Morley Nelson. And I don't know if most of you remember Morley Nelson or not, but on the other hand, he was into falconry, and he was the expert for Disney films on a number of films where falcons were involved. As a matter of fact, there's also movies on TV, on the public radio, public television channels, showing him and John Denver doing a lot of work on the overlooking the Snake River. Well, enough of that. Let's get back to George D. Clyde. He became governor of Utah. As a matter of fact, he was sworn into the office one morning. Of a rampage broke out at one of the state prisons in the afternoon. George D. Clyde went down there, and his son called him. He says, "Dad, you've only been there for one morning and you're already in prison." There are many, many individuals that deserve a lot of credit for the Western Snow Conference. Dr. Church originally sponsored it and got it together out with funds out of his own pocket. And when I started work in '48, the emphasis by the old timers, including Fred Paget, Bill Lang, I'm not going to name too many, unfortunately I'm biased, but they made it an effort and finally reimbursed Dr. Church for what he had spent in getting everything started. Dr. Church was recognized to spend time throughout the world introducing snow surveys, snow melt forecasting. It was Dr. Boardman that I feel made Dr. Church's work world known. Dr. Boardman was a professor of engineering, and he was the one that reduced all those measurements to, as I say, the rise of Lake Tahoe or to the runoff in different basins. It's interesting to note that for a long time they were stumbling on what should they be forecasting, and they decided on the April 1st, July 31st runoff amounts to be what they forecasted. it's interesting. They didn't say March 31 to July 31. No, they started it on All Fools Day. I think of it many times. I mentioned Tom Henderson.
Yep.
Tom Henderson was a hydrographer for California Electric Power Company before it was bought by Southern California Edison. And Tom Henderson was available at the 1950 meeting of the Western Snow Conference in Boulder City, Nevada, where a Nobel Prize winner, Dr. Langmuir, gave a presentation on cloud seeding, and that was straight out of the first examples of cloud seeding. They had stumbled on it on Mount Washington back on the northeast, where unfortunately they weren't getting any super cool clouds, where they were trying to analyze the type of I'm trying to think of the noise on antennas,
Yes.
aerial antennas.
Rime ice. Rime ice.
Rhine ice.
Yes.
Okay. They were unfortunate. It wasn't cold enough, but they did have a ice chest there, and they shaved some dry ice into that ice chest and immediately got snowflakes. And with that, they expanded their knowledge, probably in 1 year, less than a year. Surprisingly, somebody decided dry ice, that's a six-sided crystal. So now they look through the good chemical books, and I'm trying to think of the one, silver iodide is a six-sided crystal. And that immediately became what they were using, dumping out of airplanes. And by the way, when they were dumping it out of airplanes in those days, that was a risky job. The California Electric Power Company immediately got a World War II Lockheed 38 for their experiments with dry ice, and they used it, and as a matter of fact, they have pictures taken of it when they got in a rise that was brought on by some of the dry icing experiments, and it was really remarkable. Dr. Langmuir gave a wonderful talk. He was still working for General Electric Company. General Electric Company would not allow us to publish his presentation in the proceedings because he was in a fight with the Weather Bureau. By the way, we've all been in a fight with the Weather Bureau at one time or another. One fellow had to leave town. The weather didn't agree with him. But anyway, I have tremendous respect for everybody in the Western Snow Conference, in the hydrology, whether it's with respect to snow or measurements. I have tremendous respect for the Weather Bureau. When I was working in snow surveys, maybe we could get a good forecast for 3 days. That was trying everything. Nowadays, you can get a good forecast, as good as we got for 3 days, for 7 days. And when you consider all the practical problems of forecasting weather, I think it's remarkable what they can do. I haven't looked at my notes. We could be here another 2 or 3 hours. But on the other hand, I'll tell you a little story about when I was working for snow surveys. I always kept the office door open. Anybody passing should, oh, you're getting up to leave? I had the experience once. I gave a talk, and fellas kept leaving. Only there was one fellow left. I thanked him for listening all the way through to the end. He says, "Don't thank me, I'm the next speaker." But I forget who I was talking about, but let it be said that over the years, I've had a lot of fun. George Lewis, not alone, was the editor of the Snow Surveys Forum. He was a live wire. Everything that we see, El Frusciante, the cutting of neckties, was due to George Lewis. Let me say, I was in my office, and this I was telling you, the door was open. 2 engineers were walking down the hall. They saw me. "Fred, you could help us solve this." He says so-and-so, I say so-and-so. And they said, "What do you say?" And I said, "So-and-so." And they said, "Are you positive?" "I'm positive even when I'm wrong." And now it comes time to close, and I'm positive.
Thank you. We appreciate that a lot. So, Randall was good enough to get a video of this because we knew it might be special. And it was. There are a lot of photos of Fred with people like Dr. Church, and I didn't hit enough archives early enough to have those. But anyway, we'll get them together at some point. But anyway, so Jolene's coming back up. She might have a present. So.
Oh. You now have a brand new South Pacific bolo top.
Thank you.
And Barbara deserves a lot of credit. She drove up here with Frank from Grizzly Flat, California, east of Placerville. Thanks to Barbara.
Might take one more minute.
There you go, sir.
Only one more minute. In the Western Snow Conference decided to honor Dr. Church with a plaque that they authorized, and it was placed on the southwest edge of the bridge, just off the bridge, at Fanny Bridge at Lake Tahoe. Fanny Bridge is, everybody is looking upstream, and all you see is the posteriors. And it's an interesting place. If you ever go to Lake Tahoe, It's where the Truckee River is released from Lake Tahoe, and that plaque was put there thanks to the efforts of Irving. Oh boy. Well, I missed that one.
Irving Ingerson.
But
Irving Ingerson?
huh?
Ingerson. Ingerson.
No.
Oh.
He never did no damn thing. Over the years, we had a number of interesting experiences. Gosh, I'm going on and on. Okay, I'll go on. An interesting experience almost every time I took the family to the Western Conference, and thanks to my kids in Cheyenne, we were upstairs. The kids were in one room, and you had to go through that room to get into the room that my wife and I slept in. And we had gone to the banquet, allowing the kids to eat early so they could go upstairs and be in their room. And after the banquet, we had a little post-drinks and whatnot. And now we went up to the room, and those doors were made of 2 inches of solid oak. We rapped on the door. Our knuckles were bleeding. Nobody answering. We went downstairs and got the fellow to ring the the phone in the room. They didn't answer it. Finally, Bob Beaumont from Oregon got on a stepladder to get onto the marquee of the Hotel Stockman's, I believe, in Cheyenne, climbed through the window into their room and opened the door so we could go to bed. That particular meeting, we were in the lounge when all of a sudden a fellow dashes through the lounge. A fellow from the jewelry store says, "Stop, thief!" And 2 of the members of the Western Snow Conference took after him. One was Archwork, the other one was Bob Beaumont, and they caught the guy, and Archwork takes the gun away from him that he had, and he opens it up. He says, "My God, it was loaded." We had a number of other experiences with those trips. I look on them favorably. I'm not going to go on and on. It's, again, I'm positive.
Thank you, Brad.